Hello, Malcolm. I'm so excited to be with you here today because we're going to talk about the gender wars, which we don't talk about nearly enough. We never talk about gender on this channel.
No,
But
never men or women. But
no.
you heard a crazy theory that really clicked for me in a lot of ways, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that the
I came
gender
across this
wars.
argument that gender wars are not really about gender, but rather about class differences, and specifically between upper middle class women and lower middle class men. And this came from Cartoons Hate Her on Substack, who made this argument. And she largely implies that basically gender wars participants aren't aware of this, but I'm going to argue that they are. And then I'm also going to argue that it could very well be that all conflicts are class conflicts. And there are some really telling examples. And I think ultimately, if we acknowledge this class resource distribution issue as the underlying cause of most, if not possibly all, intergroup conflicts, maybe we can navigate them more smartly. But let's get into it.
Well,
You
hold on.
ready?
I'm actually going to push back on one area here. I'm going to
Okay.
argue
Yeah.
something else,
Okay.
which is that what creates this class divide
Hmm.
is that male communities will be drawn due to their sort of tribal centralized nature to the class norms that are normative to the community broadly. Whereas female communities are drawn to a class identity to the class identity that is shared by the most elites within the community.
Hmm.
And so even
Oh, come
if
on. I mean, like the male influencers who set tones are more elite.
male influencers who set tones intentionally code themselves as lower middle class,
Oh god, you're
and
right though. No, it's true. Even the really wealthy ones come across as so trashy. It's so
yes,
bad.
whereas
Ah.
the female elites code themselves as middle upper class Manhattanites.
Yeah, it's like old money versus new money. Gender
Like
edition.
think about like Tim Pool or something, and like the way he dresses on his show, or like
Oh, or
as
like Andrew Tate, or like the guy who wakes up at 4 a.m. and shoves his face in ice buckets of water. They all give off a very new money aesthetic. Whereas literally, like women are constantly like right now, a sort of trending thing on Instagram and TikTok is sort of this old money summer aesthetic that like people like Hailey Bieber are like not pioneering but popularizing. So it is actually that's really interesting that
but
also
also
when each class is trying to show off wealth, there is men go to new money and women go to old money right
that's
now.
not what I said at all.
Well, okay, well,
I
then
didn't
I'm
say
a
they
separate
go to
thing
new
here.
money. Consider who is actually rising within the male spaces or who won when they were. So when Andrew Tate was rising in fame, he
Okay.
didn't go to new money coding. What he went to was traditional masculine things like boxing, kick fighting, stuff like that. If you look at the male influencers who have risen within conservative spaces recently, you have individuals like Asmongold, who intentionally codes as lower middle class, even though he
Oh.
could very easily got a lot more money if he wanted to.
Oh, that's interesting.
Whereas, or consider Bronze Age pervert,
Yeah.
very intentionally codes as lower middle class, even though he went to Yale.
Or almost a stoic ascetic. They're like
Yes,
taking the
yes.
Socrates approach.
Bronze Age right nationalist does this with a lot of his stuff. He doesn't. You wouldn't have known
Yeah,
that he
yeah, no,
went
the
to
his stuff's not about
university.
money at all. It's about, like,
Yeah. If
a
anything, a
return
lot of these
to
people choose alternate personas to
okay.
hide that they are not in real life lower middle class individuals.
Oh, that's
Because
true. But also, yeah, there seems to be a correlation between, like, the actually upper class men are pretending to be lower class than they are, but then, like, the men who actually come from more middling backgrounds will act like new money.
well,
That is
and think about the way that the men who are trying to gain social status today, who even have like all the wealth you could want, are doing it. So consider somebody like Elon, right? Like, what does Elon do to try to raise his own social status when he has all the money you could ever have? He doesn't like dress in fancy clothes or anything like that. What he
uh
does is he posts controversial memes and he creates a fake account to try to make it look like he's playing a lot higher level in video
the
games than
scandals
he's
of our time.
no, 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 hold on. That's a lower he's making the wealthiest man on earth went through a huge amount of effort and ended up with a huge amount of social egg on his face to make it
So
look like he was good at a lower middle class hobby.
that's a really interesting point. I wonder if they're just evolutionarily divergent but equally valid approaches to a kind of realization on behalf of the collective online male id that they are in general lower middle class. And so either you can, as a male influencer, be like money, 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 money signaling, like I have tons of money, look at all my money, or be like, I'm a set, I don't need money. I'm above money. I'm better than money. I
No,
live in my
I'm at
humble
the end of
house.
this going to argue that what we're actually seeing here is a few things.
Okay.
It is the ways that men build camaraderie and culture
Okay.
is part of the reason why they have normalized to the lower middle class aesthetic. But the
Ooh,
other reason is the influence of the MAGA movement, and the MAGA movement, as I've noted in a number of my earlier episodes,
low
a
culture.
huge amount of cultural influence that comes downstream from the gender
Yeah.
backwoods cultural group, which is known
Mhm.
as like the redneck or hillbilly group in like popular parlance,
Yeah.
which specifically has always really shunned the trappings of the upper classes, and intentionally would really work with all of the other forces that are driving this lower middle class coding. Which is the
Mm.
area where you and I get called nerds the most because we are some of the only conservative influencers who do not code strongly as lower middle class. And if you look at a lot of the attacks on us, I actually think that they are specifically due to the class that we code as, rather than like when somebody says that I'm a simp, I think a lot of that is actually just you do not code as lower middle class.
Because you wear educated liberal elite glasses frames from Cutler and Gross, purchased in Soho.
Yes.
How dare you? How dare
Uh,
you?
how
Um,
dare you?
anyway, yeah. Okay. Okay. Then let's get into it though. I'll start by presenting the argument that inspired all this because this episode is dedicated to Diana Fleischman, who gifted me a month of a free subscription to the Cartoons Hate Her Substack, because this was a paid post, and it's titled "The Gender Wars Are Class Wars." Subtitle: Of course we'll never agree. We're living in different realities. Oh, also, though, just so you like have a little respect for her, she's not like a liberal or conservative. She's more just having fun. She refers to herself as a terminally online normie mom and a former Reddit troll who earned a total IP ban. And I feel like if you're a troll who earned a total IP ban, like you deserve at least a little bit of attention and respect. But so the TLDR of her argument is that the main issue is not gender, instead it's class differences. And specifically, this is upper middle class women and lower middle class men. She argues these groups can't agree on the basic realities of social life, so each finds each other's anecdotes about dating and marriage and status completely implausible or fabricated, which is one of the reasons why I think they're like, oh, you're making this up, or this is all cope. And then she points to some viral examples. Like there was one about like hot nannies, or grad school and marriage prospects is another example. I'm going to send you on WhatsApp just so you can see the thread. So specifically the hot nanny debate was I think sparked by a TikTok post that a Colombian nanny posted that caused a lot of the male members of the gender wars to be like, well, oh, of course the husband in this relationship is sleeping with a nanny. And they kind of like sort of dehumanized the unseen mother in the picture here of like, well, why bother, having kids if you're not even going to be around to raise them? And there's just sort of this, what she highlights is a deep disconnect between like actually having experience with nannies. Like most of the men who jump into the thread and comment on au pairs and nannies have never actually had them for themselves, don't really understand the dynamics, don't really understand like how gross it would feel if you slept
Yeah,
with a
it would be
nanny.
really gross to sleep with a nanny.
Wednesday. Bad news.
Uncle Fester is getting married.
To whom?
The nanny.
Get out of the cabin. I mean, I'd kill myself. The help? I think that's disgusting. I think they're like circus people.
Like I like the idea that somebody's like, and I even think about like my friends who have nannies and stuff like that, and we go play with them. It would be quite the like, okay, cheating on your wife within like tech elite social circles, as long as you guys first, if you say like you're polyamorous, which a lot of them do, like it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah,
If
I
you're
feel like it's almost impossible to cheat in these elite circles
and
because
you
so many are
you sleep
polyamorous.
with the nanny and she wasn't brought in knowing that this was the role she was going to play, that'd be seen as like really gross. Like this would
Well, also
actually
it's
be
it's
a
it's
faux
like a
pas.
lawsuit waiting to happen, like the
Yeah,
liability of it.
it's stupid. Like, it's not that it never happens ever, 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 but it's not a bigger threat than having your wife go to an office that you don't also work at, which, by the way, is the number one place that women cheat. It's people they meet at the office. I think it's 80% of infidelity.
It's also how
Um,
most people find relationships. Oh, yeah, with the prominent Coldplay example that surely you've heard of at this
yeah.
point.
Well, yeah, that just went live. The Coldplay, the guy who was caught cheating with his HR, and she had a husband, it was my understanding.
Yeah, and
And
he had a wife and kids.
yeah, is actually like where within, like, if you are a middle upper class couple or something like that, where the husband or wife is likely to cheat.
Yeah.
With the nanny who is like around the kids and stuff, and often comes from one like a totally different background. It's usually, you know, you're not gonna like, keep in mind, a lot of these nannies are, I'd say, like conservative Catholic types. Like
A lot, yeah.
they're usually from like middle lower class, like conservative Catholic religious backgrounds. They're not the type who's looking to sleep around with their employer.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I won't say that, like, nannies or au pairs who come to the United States from abroad and are young and hot aren't sometimes looking for romance, but they're looking for romance their own age. And while there's a bunch of people who jump in the thread and are like, "Oh yeah, like she's definitely sleeping with the husband. Nannies always do this." Like one guy who jumps in the thread, Nick Walker, he's like, "Funny how Twitter's automatically assuming she'd go for her client's husband when there's a 90% chance her fiance is better looking." And literally, we have a colleague who was formerly a nanny in the US and now lives here and is married because while she was a nanny, she met a guy her age who was awesome, who she then married. Like,
Well, no,
that's
and I
how
would
it
like to
plays
point
out.
out, I think that people aren't really thinking through this. Okay,
Mm,
so you can look at the woman in this, I'll try to post a picture of it. You can see she's a very attractive woman, and that's what's causing people to think this, right?
yeah.
But what they're not considering is the world from this woman's perspective. So I am this woman. I am young, very attractive. I'm likely from a developing country, but right now I'm staying with a wealthy family in a place like Manhattan or
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
I want to play my cards well. I'm even a hypergamous woman. What am I trying to do? I am trying to lock down a wealthy tech bro to marry me,
Yes,
not sleep
obviously.
with a guy who's paying me a fixed fee.
Well, and also
Um,
just considering, like, even looking at the bigger meta of it, this is a Brazilian, or sorry, a Colombian nanny who has posted this video on TikTok. Sorry, TikTok on TikTok. She's literally advertising how hot she is, but also what a great mother she would be. Because this video
mhm.
shows her doing all these sweet things with the kid. The kid obviously loves her, and a lot of people also chime in the thread to say, like, "Wow, I wish, like, she's great."
She's fishing with the video. The thing
Yeah,
is,
she's
it
using her opportunity to advertise what a good wife she will be. She's not trying to be the other woman, clearly.
no, but what's funny is guys are watching a video, and you are here noticing like a class difference between groups where you're seeing this flare up of
Mhm.
a person who is literally and flagrantly, if I was her like employer or something, or you'd be like, hey, that's pretty unprofessional to be looking for a husband on TikTok using your nannying job. You're watching her do something that is actually a violation, is actively unprofessional, is actively out there in a way looking for a real long-term partner,
Yeah,
and you think that she's trying to sleep with the husband, some
yeah.
old
You think she's
guy who's
putting her
already got a
job at
wife and
risk? Because
kids.
I'm sure if the parents saw this, they'd be kind of pissed. Because she's not hiding
Yeah,
a kid's face or anything, and a lot of parents are really sensitive about that. Not us, but
it's not that I've never had nannies hit on me, but it's like you wouldn't consider it, right? Like
yeah.
you'd be like, oh, that's a giant lawsuit waiting to happen that
Yeah,
would
like,
destroy my
let's
family and
definitely
everything.
not do that. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's this big, because of a few very high profile examples of people sleeping with nannies, there's this perception that it's just pervasive. And even your mom was like, don't ever get a hot nanny. Then I
Yeah.
see these archival videos of your childhood, and I'm like, who's the hot woman in the bikini playing with you guys? It's not your mom. Who's this hot woman in Italy, like sitting in your bedroom? And it's like you had hot young au pairs all the time.
Yeah.
So, and there were no problems. And yeah, I mean, you had a
Well, there's
mixture.
just not a huge benefit from the perspective of the au pair to sleep with
No,
the old ugly rich guy, or
no.
even medium age, because he's already married, he has kids. And the likelihood that they are going to break up the marriage or get him to pay her like some side amount is so much less of a good time investment than just
Mhm.
using the fact that she's from a developing country and now in Manhattan to
Yeah.
try to lock down a husband.
And that's the thing is being in these families exposes you to so many marriage prospects. And I think
Mhm.
they're also just not realizing that. Like they're not even modeling a lower middle income woman in what her
Well,
strategies
what they are
would be.
familiar with is tropes. The trope of the nanny that seduces the dad.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I know
yeah.
we'll have
So
in our comments somebody being like, "Oh, I'm aware of it happening here," and I'm aware. I'm not saying it never happens,
no,
but
of course.
I'm saying it's not something that I would actively be worried about or you would actively be worried about.
Yeah. She also, and this is something we talked about in our AI episode, how like social class can mean different things. Like you can be wealthy, but still be considered low class by many people. And you can be impoverished, but still be mixing in the most elite circles. And she points out that status is interpreted differently by each side. So like lower middle class men emphasize status as key to male attractiveness, while upper middle class women often don't even recognize their own status advantages as such. So there's just this, they are, as she's saying, living in different realities. And then she
Explain
highlights,
what you mean by what you just said.
huh?
You just said lower class men see status as
Lower class men see status as key to their attractiveness, as like the thing that they need. And once they
they're
get,
the woman's
and
their
women are,
own.
sorry, what are you asking?
You're not. You say lower class men see this as key to their, but you're not defining who there is in the sentence. Is it the lower class
Key
men?
as
Or is
key
it
to
the upper?
male attractiveness.
Okay, and women see it as key or not key to their attract.
Women don't, they often don't even recognize their own status advantages as status advantages. Like they're not aware of the fact that their income or education grants them advantages. They're like blind to it. Whereas men are like highly attuned to it.
Well, because it doesn't affect the women's advantage on dating markets as much as it affects the men's advantage on dating markets. That's why they don't notice it.
Yeah.
It's surprising they don't see it.
No, of course not. I mean, the dynamics make perfect sense. She also highlights that people tend to date and marry just within their own class and within their own educational background without realizing it. And I think that especially on, well, no, maybe on both sides, there's this expect like women often talk about like, or well, certainly fantasize about marrying men who are wealthier or higher status than they are. But in the end, they marry people who are pretty well matched. And men, I think
We're
fantasize
talking about
about,
statistically here.
so yeah,
Women, if you're talking about who people marry versus who people sleep with, yes, they're the huge problem for when people are sleeping around, where women will all match to the same few, like, whatever guys that are top, 0.5%, and that they, overly sleep with them, and that there really is a drought for the other men, and that women can, by dressing up and looking slutty, land some rich guy. If you're talking about who people actually end up marrying, it's the Daisy Buchanans. You can be the what was the other woman's name in that? The one who gets killed and is sleeping with him. Can't remember the fate of the character, right? You can't remember her. But the Daisy Buchanans
I thought there was
in
only one woman. It was just Daisy. It was always just Daisy.
no, there was the Birchroot or something. There was the lower class woman
Gertrude.
he was sleeping with who ends up trying to like run out to
Oh,
him.
sorry. Yeah, the wife of the car mechanic.
Yeah, these women are always only like side pieces or something like that. Like the idea of as a woman marrying to improve your class, it can happen, but I've seen the families that it happens in most, and it's usually the creepiest and grossest of men.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't really have like the men where I would say you could not pay me any amount of money to live that life.
Well, and you
Um,
wanna know what's interesting though, Malcolm, is also more and more people are marrying within their social class. In other words, the likelihood of
you mean
dating up
statistically
or
speaking?
dating down, it has decreased in recent decades. So in 1958, like that birth cohort, 39% married within their class. There was a lot of people who were marrying outside, and presumably this was women marrying up and men marrying down. Then in 1970, that birth cohort, 45%, so up from 39 married within their class. And then from 1976 to 1981, 56% married within their class. And presumably it's only gone up since then. No, this is from UK data, but similar trends are seen in US data. So I think less and less and less people are marrying outside their class. And maybe what's going on too is men are anchoring to a different time and they're assuming that things worked like they used to work, where men would marry some impoverished hot woman, and women would seek out some Prince Charming who'd be willing to consider her. And that just doesn't really happen anymore. People, especially because, to your point, people meet at school, people meet at work, and those are typically pretty bound by social class, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not that you. I mean, keep in mind, like the guy who was caught cheating, he was caught cheating with the head of HR, not
Yeah,
like.
no. Yeah, they were. Yeah, it wasn't a secretary. Come on. Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good point. Historically, when men cheated at the office and you had the
It
scandals of
was
it,
the
it was typically with
secretary.
the secretary.
Hmm.
Today, most of the scandals I'm aware of tech CEOs cheating with an employee, it is somebody holding a C rank position
Hmm.
or other senior position in the company. I,
Isn't that funny?
in fact, I can't think of a single secretary instance
Hmm.
in the past 10 years.
I can't either. I'm sure, people will come up with exceptions, but I just think it's far less common. But so I want to actually take this a step further, because I don't think where I love the idea presented by Cartoons Hate Her. I think she's wrong that people are just kind of talking past each other and not getting it. I actually think that either subconsciously or even explicitly, especially men who are involved in the gender wars, know that they're class wars, which is why many of them support taking women down a notch, the same way that far left socialists support the elimination of billionaires. Like both have detailed plans for how to level the playing field. Like on one side, you have Zorhan Mamdani saying, "I don't think that we should have billionaires. We need more equality." Like literally. And then you have, on the other hand, Arctotherium, whose essays we've highlighted a bunch of times here, arguing that, like in the Aporia article he wrote called The Baby Boom, he argues that we should roll back welfare and pension state income and lower income taxes, because that's mostly men paying for women, that we should roll back the regulatory state because that gives bureaucratic jobs primarily to women, that we should end affirmative action for women, that we should defund education because women primarily outperform men in the educational sphere, that we should give primarily all of the pro-natalist incentives to men and not to women, and that we should roll back the sexual revolution. Like it comes across as this same kind of like, take away the power of the billionaires, tax the rich, except in this case it's just women. But it's because in this case he sees women, and explicitly in the Baby Boom article on Aporia, he highlights the fact that women have been given sort of a bunch of artificial tailwinds enabling them to have higher relative class status and wealth to many men, which makes it harder for men to attract them.
Well,
And
no, I mean, we point out the core problem within the existing gender wars is women put a bunch of things in place to try to make men and women economically equal, and they've more than achieved that. Now women are doing slightly better than men within our generational cohort, and now they look around and be like, well, I want a man who's still like more successful than I am for a marriage partner.
yeah,
Where are those men? And it's like, well, you got rid of them. You said they were a problem, right? Like,
yeah,
so I think that a lot of people are very upset about that, especially the men who have been screwed over, because it is much more economically difficult for men these
yeah,
days than it is for women.
yeah.
Especially because as the economy is unraveling, the part of the economy that has received a bit of cushioning is the bureaucratic positions, which
Hmm.
are abnormally held by women. Now,
Well,
the
and abnormally protected and kept in place even when there's no financial justification for it.
Mhm. Now
Yeah.
eventually AI is going to rip those apart more than other sorts of positions.
Yeah, it'll happen. Don't worry, Arctotherium. Like I said in the AI and social class episode, I think women are the ones who are going to be screwed over by it, because they are not going to be the risk takers who win.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it'll
no,
happen. Give it a good
I agree
time.
with that. Well, and they're disproportionately sorting into the types of positions that AI is just going to be safer to have handled.
100%. Yeah, because they're
Um,
middle of the bell curve kind of professionals typically, and men are the outliers, and it's the outlier professionals who are
so
gonna
we
really
are
make
going to
it.
see a gender reshuffling within our generation,
Mhm.
but it's going to be a fairly ruthless reshuffling to both genders, I think.
Oh no! Well, I mean, at every reshuffling, while I think disruption typically yields more opportunities for men, relatively speaking, that's only like the side of the bell curve where, for like the sliver of men that like succeeds, like the genius outliers, and not like the equally large, if not larger, number that just
Well,
completely get
are
like
they all going
buried.
to have Elon harems? Is that how we're going to fix the birth rate? It's a signal
Oh,
harem.
with our grok girlfriends, maybe.
No, no,
Maybe.
no. Like the signal guy and Elon ended up
Oh, so
like,
like, okay, yeah, well, yeah, no, that's actually like, I
because you
think
get
that
the
many
tech
women are
wars,
going
they get
to.
like 50 wives each.
Well, yeah, that and or just in general, women will look more to like, well, I better hitch my cart to a profitable man and make money off him by raising his kids, like, or have my life supported by raising his kids. Yeah, I do think that we're going to see a lot more of that, for
Yeah, yeah.
better or for
So as
worse.
we pointed out, our general thesis is that society is going to become less equal economically speaking over time
Hmm.
because of AI.
Yep. But so speaking of this, like I was thinking about this and realizing, yeah, like a lot of this really is about resources and wealth, and it really kind of has nothing to do with gender, even though we're saying it's men versus women, and where
No,
it's
it
like
is
really
about gender. I think you're wrong there. It is 100% about gender, and it's about the structural unfairness that men deal with. But
okay. Then it's about structural unfairness. I just like let me give you some examples though, because I really do feel like most of the cultural group conflicts that we have are probably rooted in class differences, and so let's just go through some examples. Like consider racial and ethnic group tensions. Look at black-white conflict in the U.S. While race is, of course, a centralizing organizing principle in American society, research absolutely shows that divisions within racial groups are along class lines. That when wealthier Black and Latino Americans have different political priorities and lived experiences compared to poorer members of the same group, poorer individuals may feel less represented and more acutely affected by class barriers than by purely racial ones. And that absolutely shows up. Or immigrant versus
sorry, I
native
think
born
you're
groups.
saying that really, really not clearly. What she
Okay.
means by this is that if you are an upper middle class individual, you are going to look at your Black and Latino friends and say, these people are not different from me. Not only are they not different from me, but the person who says being in a Black neighborhood is dangerous is a complete psychopath. The person who says Latinos are taking their jobs, like, how could you say that? Now, you go to a lower middle class individual and you go into, or a lower class individual and you go into, Black neighborhoods, you're like, hey, this is a dangerous neighborhood. That's like a common thing to say, right? Like it's common sense. You say, hey, I lost my job at the auto shop. Everyone would be like, yeah, obviously you lost your job at the auto shop to immigrants. That happened to
Well, yeah,
my
and that's the other thing, yeah,
buddy.
because it's not just black white, it's also immigrants, but like the
But
immigrant thing isn't so much. I mean, I think when it's harder for people to maybe express the fact that like you're mad at this group because they're taking your jobs, or you feel like they're siphoning away social services that would have otherwise gone to you, and so you're like, oh, like they're eating dogs and cats. I hate them because they smell weird and they look funny and they talk
it's
funny or whatever. But like, it's
it's that they are culturally different. So again, if I'm an upper middle class individual and
yeah,
I have Black friends and I have Latino friends, because the upper middle class is gated by the urban monoculture, these individuals are culturally going to feel almost identical to myself because they are going to be
yeah,
part of the urban monoculture. If
yes,
I am lower class and I am a white guy and I have Black or Latino friends, culturally they're going to be nothing like me. They're going to be a different species from me, and I don't mean like ethnically as a different species. What I mean is they're just a different kind of person to me. The way their families are structured, the
yeah.
type of parties they host,
Well, and
the
I
type.
think the fact that they're different absolutely makes it easy for us to articulate and animate resentment in a very colorful way. But I think that the resentment stems from inequality and fear
Well, but
related to resources.
that's not even what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you are in these communities, like the conservative community, which is this lower middle class community, and I say something like Blacks are different from whites and whites are different from Latinos or something like that, and anyone in the community will be like, oh yeah, I went to a Latino barbecue and it was nothing like, and I went to a Black barbecue, and you go to a lower class Black barbecue and a lower class white barbecue and a lower class Latino barbecue, the experience is going to be like you're in a different country.
Yeah.
Now you go to an upper middle class Black barbecue or white barbecue or
Yeah,
Latino
they're all going to be the
barbecue.
same.
You
Yeah.
might have like one little activity or one little
One
thing that
dish,
happens
maybe.
that's
Yeah.
different. But to these people, when they say there are no cultural differences between ethnicities, it is genuinely because many of them really mean it in the depths of their souls. They
Mm.
have just never experienced it. And so when they hear somebody else be like, no, these groups are actually quite different from each other, they're like, oh, you could only be saying this because you're a racist. Because I know, I just the other week went to my, wealthy black friend's house, and it looked exactly like my house. And I met, his wife, and their relationship structure was exactly like mine. And I met his kids, and they go to the same type of doing the same type of thing my kids are doing, and have the same type of goals, and we're all, the same basic religion. This
And
like
this echoes the cartoons hate her argument in that within each side, they're like, I don't even know what reality you're talking about. Like this, none of this makes sense because they don't have exposure to each other's realities.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could just see this with churches. You go to an upper class, black church, and it's going to be a lot like a white church. You go to a lower class black church, and it's going to be very different, right? And this is because the urban monoculture rots society from the top down. It homogenizes society from the top down. So the closer you are to the top, even just aspirationally speaking, the less you are going to see the real differences between people, or understand, as I argued today, the modern conservative movement is made up of an alliance of often these different groups. Like, one of the reasons why, so many Latinos have come over to the conservative party, they're like, we want to maintain our distinct culture. And that they say they want us, they say they like us, but they call us Latinx, which like even ignores the basic way our grammatical structures work. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
obviously, if that is the word they use us, and it has so little respect for the way our culture is unique, they
yeah.
do plan to
It's
homogenize
like,
us.
shut up. Not only am I not Latinx and I'm not Latino, I'm not Latina. I am Colombian. I'm from
Yeah,
Argentina. Come on, like what on earth? What are you doing?
yeah. Well, and it's this homogenization,
Yeah.
this burning away of uniqueness, which is allowed for many, like, and I also think that this is just smart, because the feminist movement has sort of converged with the progressive movement, which has converged with the urban monoculture, and the anti-feminist movement has converged with the, cultural sovereignty movement, which is the, MAGA conservative movement. And so to converge culturally within your places of strength, i.e., if you go to like lower class communities, even though these groups are different and they recognize they're different, many of them will have friends in these other groups. And
Sure.
those friends will value the way that these groups are different and not want those differences further eroded, right? Like, you'll have your black friend if you're a lower class American, or your Hispanic friend, from the job site or whatever, and you'll understand that you guys are very culturally distinctive. You have distinctive gender norms, you have distinctive roles around sexual taboos, you have distinctive, and you want to maintain that distinctiveness. And so when you're coming and you're like, okay, let's all get together and work out how we're going to fight against this homogenizing force, it works to come to this lower and lower middle class place. And if
Yeah,
you're
and but
all
I mean, I hear you, and you're saying this is cultural, but I'm also saying that I think that the resources, money, class element of it is underrated. Like, I'm okay, just aside from race, talk about like rural urban divides. A lot of that comes down. It's not just culture; it's also about feeling economically marginalized compared to urban centers, and that tension can feel real. Like we've spoken with people who are like, yeah man, I feel completely left behind, who live in more and
rural settings, yeah.
okay, consider also like boomers versus millennials. When you actually look, I mean, millennials will make fun of boomers and vice versa about like their cultural things, but in the end the big resentment is the younger generations are like, the boomers have all the money, they have all this wealth, they're like, oh, just work and you'll be fine. And like it doesn't work that way anymore, and there's a lot of resentment there, and it stems from resources.
Yeah, well, I mean, this explains why if you go to all of the protests against Trump, it's like only boomers, if people have been talking about it. These are boomer protests. There's like no young people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to your point about this urban monoculture as well, I think a lot of that also then also it boils down to class. You have a higher resourced, more educated class of people that has become homogenized, and then you have a bunch of other people, and it it gets weird for with that, because then you have the urban monoculture also being really socialist, and like they hate people with money, but they are
No,
the ones
they're
with
not socialists. What socialism and communism is it is the ossification of the bureaucratic hierarchy that is existing within our society, but just
money.
making it so that the bureaucrats have to work even less. When we talk about like AI eroding bureaucratic jobs, it does that if we maintain capitalism. If we
Mhm.
switch to socialism, they get to keep their positions within the system forever.
Okay.
And Lord
Yeah, it's them keeping power. and communal
Socialism,
narcissism, as we
as
talked about on today's
practiced
episode.
by the left at any time in human history, is never about wealth redistribution in any sort of real sense.
Mm.
It is about the ossification of a bureaucratic power structure.
Okay, well, that explains it. But I mean, I'm just trying to point out that a lot of seemingly cultural conflicts in the end are about competition over jobs, housing, political power, and class position influences who perceives opportunity and who feels threatened. And with the gender wars, a lot of this comes from, man, like women have been given all this like affirmative action and they get all the bureaucratic roles and they're doing better in education. And there's a lot of resentment about it. And maybe it would be more productive if people just explicitly talked about that, like Arcturium does, whether or not it's true. Because some studies have found, like, they looked at some areas where men did get better economic achievement and better social status, and that still didn't produce more children. So I don't, like but we should be having that conversation instead of just being
Well, no,
like,
but this is
oh,
mostly that
well,
outside of children, women today, like if you look at this generation, there's been some graphs that we've gone over in other episodes.
yeah,
They increasingly, like over the past 10 years, believe that women increasingly, like with a sharp increase, there is a perception among women that women are being treated worse over time. That the society is more unfair towards women. That college entrance is more unfair towards women. Even though, like, by the facts, this is objectively untrue to anyone who's like living in reality. And so I think that, they say, well, you're just living in different realities because you're seeing different class norms. And
yeah,
it's like, no, we on the conservative side acknowledge their class norms and their reality. Often, like, there's some instances where there's like the maid situation and they just have no idea what's going on because they've never experienced it.
yeah.
But broadly speaking, we acknowledge their class norms and they are unaware, or are they actively choose to be like, no, you people aren't experiencing these things. They will say
Yeah,
no.
because they're the privileged ones, and the men are the lower class ones.
No, no, no. They'll be like, oh, like a upper class woman will be like, oh, like upper middle class. I just can't find a guy who meets my standards, and we're like, yes, you can't. I agree. Here's why. Will say like, oh, I lost my job because of an immigrant or something like that at the car shop, and they'll be like, that didn't happen. Or, like actually, there are really big differences between the ethnocultural groups in this country, and then they're not exactly living harmoniously with each other, and they'll be like, no, you haven't experienced that because, or crime is actually a real problem right now in my city, can you do something about it? And they're like, well, I just looked outside and it's not a problem, right? Or like,
Yeah.
they stole my car and really that was a good thing because now somebody who needs it has it.
Yeah, probably need, yeah, oh gosh. Those arguments I haven't heard in a long time, but there were absolutely those arguments of, well, I think he needed my bike more than I did,
There was a
which is
no, there was
just,
a not too long ago, or maybe like a couple of years ago, post by a comedian where somebody had broken into his car, and he goes, "Well, this is just like the price you lay to live in a wonderful city like LA." And it's like, well, if you actually didn't have a lot of money, somebody breaking into your car is a huge financial deal, even if they don't steal it.
yeah. Remember when your car was broken into?
Yeah.
And it just was, yeah. It's not like even people who, are not on the lowest ends of society aren't really hurt by that. I mean, we still own that Mazda and we drive it every day. Like,
I've
the,
yeah, I've
these are our
still
forever cars. Like, I don't know what to say.
live
2010
live
Mazda,
by the
God
way, for
bless
people
it.
wondering about our frugalness, I still live with the very first car I ever got, and we work on it all the time to keep it good. But yeah, am I gonna be one of those guys who keeps the car for so long it becomes like a classic?
I don't know if a 2010 Mazda is ever really going to become.
It's a good car.
Yes, it is. I'm very fond. It's bit like nothing. It doesn't do any. It is the Simone of cars, right? Like, workhorse, doesn't complain, doesn't break down very much as long as you drive it the right
Well, don't
way.
cars become classics after 30 years?
I don't know. Is there some designation?
I
Is this
think
like
so.
vintage versus antique? You got to school me. I don't do cars.
A car needs to be 20 years old to be a classic. This car is 15 years old. I'm
All
5
right.
years from being a classic. It becomes a classic in 2030, Simone.
Well, hold on to it, my friend.
I had no intention of selling it. That's crazy. I could actually be that old man who's driving around a classic car just
The
because I
proud
actually
owner of a
have money to
classic
take care of
car
it.
that your mom maligned. We can't even say online what she called it. That's one of those few things we can't even say.
Right. Yeah. Anyway.
God.
So wait, do you have any other arguments here?
No, I actually I want people to think more about why they're actually mad about things or mad at groups.
I disagree. I think that they're mad at them because of the unfair dating and market dynamics and the systemic unfairness towards men. But what I
And
will
and
agree,
I think that's a resource
no,
thing.
but what I will, no, no, I'm saying this is their predominant area of madness. What I will agree with this article is that
Not area of madness, the primary reason for their grievance. You make it sound
the
like they're
primary,
crazy.
whatever. You see, this is. I am speaking like a lower class person, area of madness, and you are speaking like an upper middle class person, reason for grievance.
Well,
So
I don't think that men appreciate being referred to as hysterical. That's what they do to the women.
Simone. So no, I'm just using like broad words that anyone can
Okay,
use, and you're
fine.
trying to get all fancy with your language here.
Uh-huh.
You're fancificationing in your words,
With my
but
upper middle class feminine ways.
yes. But the point I'm making is that I think that she's wrong and that the grievance areas are being misinterpreted. But what I will agree with is that these two movements have become coded with different social communities,
Mm.
different social classes, and I think it's important to ask why are they being coded with these various social classes. And it's
Mm.
not that I don't think that a lot of the foot soldiers of wokeism are impoverished people, but they are impoverished people living with like 20 people in a like polyamorous house in like Manhattan or Portland to live the simulacrum of the upper middle class lifestyle.
Uh-huh.
There is this obsession with living within the simulacrum of this lifestyle. And I think that part of that is downstream of women's psychological differences in men. And the males saying, "Hey, I want to be accepted by the norm, like of this larger like new right community. Therefore, I am going to appeal to the average man. I'm gonna, like Elon with the gaming stuff, or like Asmongold, or like." And I think that that is also downstream of the dominant culture within this movement, which, as we've noted, is our own culture, which is the sort of greater Appalachian, like clan-based cultural tradition, which is very okay with differences and very hostile towards elitism and aristocracy.
Well, what about
Um,
all the men who keep trying to show flash around money that they may or may not have?
Well, this is the point. They often rose. If you look at the men who rose in the last generation of the conservative cycle, when the aristocratic Cavalier group or Deep South group still was the dominant group at the party,
Oh.
it
So
made
you're
sense.
saying the new version of aspirational male is low culture, lower class signaling, whereas the previous generation was flash money. It's a
Yes,
time thing. It's a trend thing. Okay.
yes.
Okay,
And
that
when
helps
they
too.
do this today, either they look buffoonish or they look like they're part of a separate cultural group. What
Okay.
I mean by this is that we lived in Miami for a period. And when I saw a man flash money to attempt to attract a woman, always my initial reaction is, "Oh, he's a Latin American." Like like that was even if I was like he must be Latin American, right? Like he's not a American American because he's acting in a way that is discordant with the dominant cultural value system within this country at the moment.
Hmm.
And I think that either people look like they're just signaling that they're which is fine, right? Like a Latin American man in Miami trying to attract Latin American hoes in Miami
Yeah, you're
is
playing that game. You got to signal to the right audience.
that's the effing game, man, right? Like, no, I'm not gonna hate the player for that, right? But I look at that and I'm like, oh, I would not want those women. I would pay to not have to sleep with those women or to not have those women approach me. Like he is fishing for a fish that I don't eat. And I have never had any interest in eating that fish. So it's just a different cultural game that he's playing. And I'm just like, okay, fine, play this alternate cultural game. Or I think that, oh, they're like buffoonish and behind the times. They
Hmm.
don't understand what's going on these days because you look at the billionaire class and none of them are doing that anymore. They're trying to hide
No.
that stuff.
Yeah, and sleeping with their colleagues, their high
Except
status
for
colleagues.
Jeff Bezos, who I've always said just looks like an out of touch buffoon. The woman he's marrying looks like you just
Yeah, but I feel like
or
he did that to her because when they first started dating, she hadn't had that much work done.
but it,
So,
it looks super low class.
yeah. But
I mean,
also like he started from humble beginnings. So, he's not old money. I was watching a YouTuber talk about old money recently I think my algorithm is serving that up ever since I watched some video about it. And she was like, "Oh, old money, that's like, 50 years." And I'm like, "No, that's 50 years is not old. Old money is like 3 generations of a family of wealth. It is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos is new money, and therefore it should come as no surprise that his wife doesn't look like, oh, it's like that scene from Legally Blonde
No,
where
I'm gonna push back here. I think the old money, new money distinction is stupid. There is a lot of, first of all, we argued in another video, I don't think it's gone live yet, that old money basically doesn't exist anymore. That it as
no,
a
no, no, that was in our AI and social class video where we
Right,
talked about
it
basically,
as a social class has mostly dissolved at this
yeah,
point.
yeah,
And so right now what you have is two groups, and both of them are fairly new wealth. One of them is sort of hip with the times and everything like that. This is like your Elon or your Zuckerberg. I mean, he might be like a bit out of it, but he broadly knows what's going on, or your Teals or your Andreessens or whatever, right?
mhm,
Um, and then your other is like, your Jeff Bezos or your what's his name, Bill Gates, or your whatever. This is like the more generic class, and they're more like trying to culturally signal to communities that don't really exist anymore. They're trying
mhm,
to culturally signal to what they wanted people to respect, 50 years ago or 20 years ago when they were growing up.
mhm.
And not the way things are on the ground right now. So I think the old money, new money distinction is just completely silly because it doesn't really exist anymore. It is the people who are hip to the ways that culture has changed and people who are trying to signal to a mostly dead or gone audience that's not really there
No,
anymore.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, that old money now only is an aesthetic because now people with intergenerational wealth don't have the discipline required to maintain intergenerational wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah. Which we talked about this. Go see AI on social class, our video on that. We basically talk about how everything we've seen at family wealth conferences and among these types of groups is basically they're like, oh, I just want my kid to be happy now. Whereas before it used to be like
All the kids are
K-pop,
communists and
like,
they have no kids themselves. Like
yeah. Whereas like before, if you look at the Kennedys, like they weren't having fun. Those kids were like being engineered to be future presidents and
yeah.
politicians. They weren't, this was Disney Kid. This was K-pop idol. Like you're gonna be so yeah, now they're, oh, I just want them to be happy. So yeah, the money gets pissed away. All right. I love you, Malcolm. Thank you.
Love
This
you to
was a
death,
fun
Simone.
conversation. You always widen my perspective. But yeah, cartoons hate her. Fun.
By the way, on the next episode, I think you might want to change the topic, and you need to ask Diana first if we can do this topic,
Okay.
because I think it's a little rude to do it without asking her.
I did. Yeah, well, there aren't that many people who are as bullish as we are on raising our kids with AI.
How
So
did the episode do in terms of comments today?
people really enjoyed it. People were very keen to draw the connection between communal narcissism and women.
Communal narcissism and women. Yeah, with the communal narcissism episode. I didn't expect the episode to do as well as it did, really. We were like, oh, this is just such blatant red meat for our audience. Like, this is not going to hit number one, and it hits number one.
When we feel like we need to get performance to work, how can we just make progressives and women look bad?
Our channel's numbers right now, by the way, someone you want an update, we're at, in terms of view count just on YouTube per every 28-day period, 368,000. So getting close to 1 million there. And in terms of watch time hours per 28-day period, 179.5 thousand. So around 180,000 hours watch time
That's a lot of
per 28 days.
it's a lot of time.
I'm proud of this. We built this into something kind of cool. From just a few people watching and my mom being like, "You look like a fool talking on YouTube and no one's listening."
Well, she came around to it. She came around.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. I think she'd be pleased. All right, you ready?
All
Get
right.
those thick glasses on that trigger people so freaking hard. Have you lost the other glasses? I do like the other wireframe glasses.
Yeah, I should look around for them. I have them somewhere. The core reason I don't wear them anymore is because they're not like fitted correctly right now.
Oh, okay.
So we got to take them to New York and take them to the store where they're made because nobody else works on them. Do you see? You put the car in the walls.
Wait, so he's putting the car in the house?
Yeah.
These are banana bread.
I'm trying to
Thank
go
you.
inside.
Well, then walk out the door.
I want to take that out.
Why is your car inside the house?
I don't know.
Why are you going for this whole? Are you like renovating? It looks a little rough. Maybe it looks a little rough because you drove a car into your house.
Yeah, I don't know. Why did we get rid of
Why is the cleanliness check mark yes? Oh, house condition is at 23%. That helps to explain it.
Hey, are you serious?
All right, eat your